Hello everybody and welcome back to Lab 3, Introduction to Spatial Analysis. So in this lab we're going to be using the same software from last week, QGIS. So this is free and there is another installation guide at the beginning of the lab document. If you were unable to download it last week, it is also available through Udesk if you prefer to work that way. And the demonstration on how to access Udesk is in both Lab 1 and Lab 2. So refer back to those guides if you need any help accessing Udesk. Once you have QGIS installed and you know it is operating functionally, you want to make sure that we have our correct data management folders set up. So this is going to look pretty much the same every week for our labs. You'll notice we'll create a new folder in our the folder we've created for the cores. Mine is just Geo2812. So from here, you want to make sure you have a Lab 3 folder created and that you have downloaded the Lab 3 zip from As You Learn. In the video last week, I walk you through how to extract it, how to extract the zipped Lab 3 or any lab document into a folder you have created. So once you do that, it'll look like this. And for the purposes of this lab, once you have this all set up, we want to come into our Lab 3 folder that we downloaded from As You Learn, and we want to make sure that cities and rivers are within that folder. You want to make sure in your Lab 3 folder that you have a data folder again. So make sure you're coming to New Folder and name it Data. And once you have your data folder good to go, you can come back to the zipped lab folder that you downloaded, and you want to select both cities and rivers. To select two at the same time, you hold down the Control button, and that will allow you to select multiple folders at once. We want to copy these, very similar to last week, and paste them into the data folder. And that's what it'll look like once you are all set. Once your Lab 3 data folder looks like this with cities and rivers in there, you can go ahead and minimize or close out of your file manager for now and navigate to the Lab 3 Google Doc. And from here, we're going to go to Part 1 and click on this link to the US Census Bureau website. We're going to be downloading a shapefile from there to use in QGIS. So once you're on this page, you're going to scroll down for a while until you see states down here, and you should see the 1 to 500,000, 5 million, and 2 million scales. You can refer to the lab document to verify the picture screen capture there is the exact spot you want to look for, and we want to download this shapefile, this 500K zip. So this is not as large as a file as I was expecting, but yeah, once that's downloaded, you can come back to your file manager, go to downloads, select it, and extract all in a zip. So we are just going to extract all, and it will appear like this once it's complete. If you go back to your downloads, if you didn't specify a place to extract it, it will just appear again in your downloads unzipped. From here, let's go ahead and rename this simply states. Once that is renamed, we want to copy, right-click, copy, and bring it into our Lab 3 data folder by pasting. And this is what your Lab 3 data folder will look like to begin the exercise. Once it looks like this, you're ready to move into QGIS. Once you have QGIS open, you can click on this empty new project. And again, just like last time, we are going to immediately save. So make sure you are in your Lab 3 folder and name this your username _ Lab 3 and click save. Make sure you are also manually saving throughout frequently, and you can just do that by going to project save. So you will have to be doing that on your own as frequently as you are comfortable with. Before we begin adding data, take a second to get comfortable with the browser tab and where your data and shapefiles are stored. So if you note, the browser tab will be on the left-hand side, and you can control the width of it by moving the cursor over like this. Come down to the project home, and you'll see data. So this is that data folder you just created. and you want to expand cities and rivers to look at the shape files in there. Once you expand those drop-down menus, you can click and then right-click and go to Layer Properties. So from here, you will see the features of the layer as well as the geometry. Make sure to take a note of both this one from cities and rivers to answer question 2 in the lab document, and you want to put your answer in the table format that the lab document provides. Once you're familiar with where your data is actually stored, we're going to go ahead and get started with adding the data into the map view. So you want to locate this US state 500K shapefile, and you can either double click or drag it down into the layers menu. If you get a prompt asking about transformation, go ahead and click cancel. And your map will appear in the map view here. So it might be a different color for everyone. It kind of just auto generates. And down in the layers tab, you'll notice that this is where it was uploaded. This is the file you copied over. And the check mark tells you which file is being displayed. So you can click on and off if you want to view various layers. So now we want to change this name to just states. So to do that, we need to navigate to the Layer Properties tab. You can get there by either double clicking, or you can right click and get to Properties. It'll bring you to the same place. And then from here, we want to navigate to Source, and you'll see the layer name up here. Clear out the entire name as it was and just name this states. And you can go ahead and just press OK, and this will finalize the changes, and you'll notice that the name immediately updates in the Layers tab. The next thing we're going to do is add the rivers and cities shapefiles into the Layers tab. So you can do this just by navigating back to the browser and double clicking, and those will both appear. And then you'll notice they appear in the map view. And again, same deal with these. You can select them on and off if you want to see the rivers or the cities separately or together with the states. So once you have all those in the layers tab, you'll notice they're in order. This is called the drawing order. So the layer on the bottom is the base layer and the others are added on top. You can move these around by clicking, holding, and you'll notice once that little arrow appears at the bottom, it will move. It can be a little tricky, but you'll notice if I move cities below rivers here, if I move cities below rivers here, the rivers will appear on top of the cities, and if I move them back, the rivers will disappear. So reorder these so that states is at the bottom. That's how it should be, but just make sure that your states are on the bottom and then either rivers or cities above it. So you might notice that your map looks a little bit different in any of the layers. The symbology is randomly generated. So every time you incorporate a shape file, it will kind of just give you something random, but you can play around with this. So to do any appearances, adjustments, you want to double click on the layer and navigate to symbology, and it will open something up like this. For our purposes, you will be better off staying in the simple fill. You can come down to fill and click simple fill and find a drop down color wheel. There's some standard colors, which I'm going to go ahead and just use a solid green for my states layer just to represent land. And you can hit apply and see what that looks like before you finalize and press OK. And you can play around with this. You're really free to do whatever you want. I find it personally easiest to try to replicate the lab colors as close as possible so I can follow along. But anything that's going to be easy and intuitive for you, you're welcome to use. And when examining what the symbology will look like, feel free to zoom in and move around to kind of get the exact view for how the symbology looks. If you get messed up and end up with just a blank white space and are not really sure where you are, you can always come back to the layer, right click and zoom to layer. You notice with this shapefile, when we do that, it zooms out a ton. That's to include, this is actually the Pacific Ocean, and that's to include the US territories. So go ahead and click on cities and rivers and change the color and style of these layers too. I am going to make my rivers blue and my city dots black. Once you're happy with how your layers look, we are going to move on to changing projections. So in the Layers tab, come down to States and double click to open the properties and navigate to Information. Here you will see the coordinate reference system. You'll also see datum and projection if a coordinate system is not there. So you'll note here for states, the CRS is listed as NAD 83, and you'll note that the unit is in degrees. So once you have the information you need from that, you can press OK, and you want to do that. You want to examine the layer information for all three of the layers to help you answer question 3. You will use the layers and answer the question in the table format that the lab document provides. So after clicking through all the layers, you should have noticed that the coordinate reference systems are not all the same. The data sets still align because they're projected on the fly. And so while this temporarily will align the data, to continue further analysis, we need to actually change the reference system so that they all align. So to actually change the CRS, we want to navigate to the Layers menu and right-click on States and click Export, Save Feature As. And we want to change the format to an S3 shapefile. And next to File Name, go ahead and click Browse and navigate to your States file within the data within your Lab 3. And once you are there, you can go ahead and just name this project States Project and click Save. And we're not done quite yet, so we want to actually change the CRS. We want to click on this button to the right, the little kind of globe icon, and in the filter, we want to type in US National Atlas equal area. And you'll see this come up, and it will be EPSG 2163. Click on that one, and then we can click OK. And then again, this is what your final screen should look like before you click OK, and click OK one more time. Make sure that this Add Saved File to Map is checked, and click OK, and you'll notice that the States project has appeared in our Layers view. Once you have that States project loaded in the Layers view, you can go ahead and uncheck States, but don't remove it just yet. We're going to want to hold on to it in the future, so you can just uncheck it for now. So once you have the States project layer loaded, you'll notice the symbology again was randomly generated. I am going to hang on to this red just because it's still a nice contrast, and I don't want to change it to the exact same color as the States just because I don't want to confuse myself for which layer I'm currently viewing. But so to view the updated spatial reference information in our new States project layer, we're going to right click, go to Properties, and go to Information, and you'll notice that it is now the CRS that we just changed it to a second ago. But to see the change, we actually need to change the projection of the entire project, not just the individual files. And before we actually change the entire project's projection, let's go ahead and quickly save. This is just a little reminder, if you haven't saved in a while, once you edit all the symbology, go ahead and do so. So to actually change the project CRS, we are going to go back to that project tab and come down to Properties. And then in the CRS tab, we want to select the US National Atlas equal area. So type that into filter. It will be US National Atlas equal area. Again, you'll find it there. go ahead and click OK. And you'll notice immediately that the projection will change. From here, using the pan tool and the zoom in tool, go ahead and zoom into North Carolina. So you want to make sure that it's fully in the frame. And again, you can use the pan tool to drag it if you want a little bit better of a view. Once you do that, go ahead and save again, and we will be ready to move on. Once you are centered on North Carolina, we're going to play around with the Identify Features tool so you can obtain some information about North Carolina cities. So to do that, we're going to come up to the toolbar here and select this Identify Features tool. It looks like a little information tab that's being clicked on. And from here, you can click on any city in North Carolina, and its name, population, everything will pop up here on the right. At first, your view might look like this with things kind of cut off. You want to come actually into this window and drag it so that the feature is fully visible. Playing around with it like this doesn't auto adjust, so you want to make sure you're actually in the window. And going like that to get the full feature name. So after we use these Identify Feature tab, we want to use a similar tool, which is called Select Features, and that is located right above our Layers tab. It looks like a little window within a window. You can go ahead and click on that, and once it's selected, your cursor will appear with this box over it. So for our purposes, we want to select the two westernmost cities in North Carolina. So you can do that just by clicking and dragging, and the box will encompass those. That is the two cities we are looking for, the ones I just selected. And so once you select them, they'll appear in yellow. So GIS does not only just provide visual map features, but also indicates information about the features called attributes. To examine in attributes table, we want to come over to the layer. For this, for our purposes, we're going to select the cities project and right click and come down to open attribute table, and that will appear like this. When the table pops up, you'll notice at the top the features totaled as well as the two we have selected. So it notes that there's almost 4,000 features or cities in this data set, and that we just collected or selected the westernmost two cities. And at the bottom left, we can come down here to change show all features to show selected features, and that will highlight the cities that we selected, and you'll note that they are Hendersonville and Asheville. From here, you just want to close the table and come back up to the same tab where you clicked on select features, and we are going to deselect features, and you'll notice they'll disappear. And if you ever want to get back to just the general mouse, you can come back up to this pan, and then you are no longer selecting or doing anything. This is a pretty safe cursor to have so you don't affect the project in any way. So now we are going to work on labeling features. So to identify major rivers in the United States, we'll want to label them. So in the Layers tab over here, we can double click on the Rivers project, and then in the Labels tab, we'll come down and select Single Layers, and that will show single label, and that will show the labels and what everything is called so far. So we want to, in the drop-down menu, we want to make sure that this is selected with name, and you can mess around again with the font color and such down here. You can make it however you want, however it's readable. I am going to keep mine like this, but feel free to play around with whatever you want, and you can preview the changes by selecting apply. So just for fun, I can change mine to blue and click apply, and you'll notice that the names now appear in blue, and I can go ahead and hit OK, and those will save. From here, we're ready to move on to part 3. So part 3 is going to consist of spatial analysis. The object of this exercise is going to be to spatially analyze the 3 data sets. This process is going to examine the spatial characteristics of the data or how features relate to one another. So we're going to do some single layer geoprocessing followed by curing. And geoprocessing describes when an action is taken to a data set that results in a new data set being created. An example of this is buffering. And curing refers to conditions used to retrieve data from a database. So we will use a spatial query to select features surrounding another feature. Then we will use structured query language, SQL, to discover some specific information about our data. So the first step is to create some buffers. So we want to create a roughly 15-mile buffer around the rivers. So to do that, we're going to come up to the vector menu and go to geoprocessing tools and click on buffer. For the input layer, you want to come down and drop down to select the rivers project. And under distance, you want to type 24,000, which is approximately 15 miles in meters. And we want to make sure that selected features only and dissolve results are both unchecked. So selected features only is not checked. Dissolve results is also not checked. We want to come over to the buffer tab, so scroll all the way down and click on this browse. And then we want to go down to save to file. And so we're going to navigate to the rivers folder in our data folder within our lab 3 folder. And we want to name this river buffer 15, just to let us know that it's the buffer for 15 miles around the river. And save type as, we want this as a shape file, SPH, which is up at the top. So it took me a second to remember where that was, and then we're going to click save. From here, you can go ahead and press run, and then close. Now we want to reorder the layers so that cities project and rivers project are above river buffer. So remember to do that, we want to click and hold, and remember they'll appear, oops, sorry, that's the wrong one, they'll appear over top of them. So you can see that our rivers appeared as we moved them over the river buffer. So once your layers are in order with river buffer on the bottom and rivers and city projects above it, we are ready to move on to select a river feature. You'll notice I changed my background from red to green just because it looked a little bit better with the purple river buffers, but you're welcome to change either symbology in river buffer or states projects. So that is easy and appealing to you. But so once you have that map looking correct, we want to actually select the feature. So make sure you have river buffer highlighted in the layers, and we're going to come up to select features right above that layers classification, and you can just drag over it, and you'll notice it only selected the river buffer, not the river itself or any cities. If you end up selecting any cities or rivers, it's probably because your river buffer wasn't selected in layers. You can always just deselect and try again if that's the case. So once we have the PD river selected, we want to look at some of its attributes. So to do that, we're going to get back to that attribute table, go to the layer, right click, and open attributes. And again, you'll notice that we have one attribute selected from this layer. So we want to navigate to that by coming down to that button where it says show all features, and we are just going to show selected features. And this will tell us the length in miles of the river. So for question 8, you want to find this value and round it to the nearest tenth, which is the first decimal place. So go ahead and make a note of that for question 8, and then you can close out the table, but don't deselect the river just yet. So now we want to create a spatial query, and we want to examine how many cities are within 15 miles of the PD river. So your river should still be selected in yellow, and once it is, we want to come up to vector, scroll over research tools, and then click on select by location. And from here, where it says select features from, we want to make sure that the cities project is selected. And then where the feature, under this where the features section, you want to uncheck intersect and check are within. And you also, it'll say by comparing the features to, we want to make sure that that is river buffer 15 and check selected features only. You can go ahead and run that and then close. To see the results and see which cities are within a 15-mile range of the PD River, you want to go to Cities Projects and open that attribute table, and you'll notice of all of the features, the amount selected. So there is 13 cities selected, and again, you can navigate to Show Selected Features, and that will tell you which 13 cities were selected, and you are going to use this to finish the table for question 8. So with the cities and rivers still selected, we now want to look at the population of these cities. So make sure again that these are still selected. If you need to go back and do that process again, please go ahead and do so. And you can just also, this is a good point to save, just a little reminder for you. But so moving on, we want to come up to the Vector tab and come down to Analyst Tools and over to Basic Statistics for Fields. So for our input layer, we want it to be the cities projects, and we want to use selected features only. So this means it is only going to analyze those 13 cities that are within 15 miles of the PD. And we want to calculate the statistics on population. So make sure your table looks like that. If your selected features box does not allow you to select it, it means you'll have to go back and repeat the earlier steps to select those cities. But you can go ahead and click run, and this will pop up. It'll move over to this log window, and you want to scroll down and find sum. And this sum is the total population of cities within 15 miles of the river. And that is also, if you want, you can close this out, and in the results viewer, you can click on this, and it should open a PDF if it's just a little bit easier for you to view something that way, but you have options for your viewing. And once you have what you need to complete step 37 and answer the last section of that table where it's cities per 100 miles of the river, you can go ahead and deselect the features, and you're going to do that whole process again, but for the Chattahoochee. So once that is completed, you can go ahead and save again, and we will move on to the last section. And also just a note, in case you're having trouble, the Chattahoochee is right here. For the final part of the lab, we're going to open the cities project attribute table. Again, just select and right click. And we're going to navigate to the select features using an expression tab, which looks like a little backwards 3, the sum sign. You can click on that. And to build this query, you must start with a field, then an operator, and end with a value. So to add a field, we want to drop down fields and values, and we want to double click ST to select state. Next, you can minimize that, and we want to expand operators, and we are going to select the equal sign. So to choose a value, you can go ahead and minimize the operators. We want to navigate back to the fields and values, and we're going to single click on the ST instead of double click, and click on all unique. And then from the list possible that appears, you want to scroll down to NC and double click on that, and then click select features to run this, and then we can go ahead and close. So the query we built selected all cities listed in the state of North Carolina, and in this attribute table you'll notice that that total is 86. So for the final steps of the lab, we are going to enter one more expression. So open the attribute table again for the cities projects and navigate back to select by expression. From here, we are going to go all the way down to recents and click on our original expression. So now we want to see how many cities in North Carolina have over 100,000 population. So to do this, we want to keep that original expression and then navigate to operators and do and. So this is the original expression and another filter for population over 100,000. So once we've added and, we want to go back to fields and values and add population, and then add the appropriate Boolean operator. So back down to operators greater than 100,000. And you'll notice some of my error messages came up and went. If you enter the expression correctly at the end, it should let you run. And you'll notice that 9 features were selected. So that is all you need for this lab. Please don't forget to submit in PDF.